Your support matters. With 90% of our viewers yet to subscribe, we need your help to keep creating engaging content. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let us know where you're watching from. Leave your city in the comments below. Elena had always embodied the ideal devoted wife. She was a woman who believed wholeheartedly in the sanctity of marriage, taking pride in her home and her husband, Marcus. Together, they had crafted a life that many envied: a charming house in a picturesque neighborhood, 2 delightful children, and a seemingly perfect relationship. Yet, beneath this polished exterior, Elena felt a growing discontent that gnawed at her soul. Marcus was a successful entrepreneur, consumed by his work. His dedication and ambition often kept him preoccupied with business deals and late-night meetings. While he thrived professionally, the demands of his career took a toll on their personal life. Elena learned to cope with his frequent absences, filling her days with the children, community events, and the occasional dinner with friends. But as time went on, the loneliness began to suffocate her. Elena found herself drifting into daydreams, longing for a life filled with passion and excitement, something that had faded into the background of her routine. She missed the thrill of being desired, the spark that had once ignited her heart. One evening, while attending a charity gala that Marcus had insisted she attend in his place, Elena met Julian. He was a charismatic businessman with an effortless charm and an infectious laugh. As they struck up a conversation, Elena felt a spark she hadn't experienced in years. Julian listened intently as she spoke about her aspirations, dreams, and the frustrations that clouded her life. It was refreshing to feel seen and appreciated by someone who wasn't absorbed in spreadsheets and conference calls. As the night progressed, they danced under the twinkling lights, lost in each other's gaze. It felt innocent at first, just 2 people enjoying an unexpected connection. But Elena could sense the chemistry crackling between them, an electricity that made her pulse quicken. Days turned into weeks, and Elena found herself thinking about Julian more often than she should have. They began exchanging messages, discussing everything from books to their favorite travel spots. Each message felt like a breath of fresh air, pulling her further away from her mundane reality. Eventually, their conversations turned flirtatious, and Elena felt a thrill she hadn't felt in years. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, she decided to meet Julian for coffee. What started as a casual outing quickly escalated into something more profound. They shared their dreams, desires, and vulnerabilities, and suddenly, Elena was captivated. In that moment, the lines blurred. She was drawn to Julian's ambition and charisma, qualities that had slowly faded in her marriage. As they stood together, the world around them faded away, and for a fleeting moment, she felt alive again. On a chilly evening, they found themselves outside a quaint cafe, the air thick with unspoken tension. As they lingered, Julian leaned in closer. Elena's heart raced. She could feel the heat radiating between them. In a moment of weakness, she closed her eyes and let herself succumb to the undeniable attraction. Their lips met softly at first, then with an urgency that stole her breath away. Elena pulled back, wide-eyed and breathless. What had she done? Guilt washed over her, but the thrill of the kiss lingered in her mind. She had crossed a line she never thought she would, and yet the taste of adventure was intoxicating. In the days that followed, Elena was torn. She returned home to Marcus, who was blissfully unaware of her internal turmoil. She put on a brave face, but every smile felt like a mask. The weight of her secret pressed down on her, and she oscillated between guilt and exhilaration. Days turned into a blur of stolen moments and furtive messages with Julian. Each interaction deepened her conflict. She loved Marcus. He was a good man and a devoted father. Yet, she felt an insatiable need for something more, something she had buried beneath the responsibilities of everyday life. As the weeks passed, Elena found herself caught in a web of emotions. The thrill of her secret rendezvous with Julian was exhilarating, but the guilt was suffocating. Every time she looked at Marcus, she saw the man she had promised to love and honor, and the weight of her actions hung heavy in her heart. At a crossroads, she contemplated what she truly wanted. Could she have both passion and stability? Or was she destined to choose between the two? It was a painful realization that she had to confront her feelings head on. Elena decided to take a step back. She needed clarity. One evening, she sat down and wrote a letter to herself, pouring out her heart and soul onto the page. She reflected on her marriage, her desires, and the life she had built with Marcus. As she wrote, tears streamed down her face, a cathartic release of the pent-up emotions that had been festering inside her. In that moment of reflection, Elena understood that she needed to confront her feelings, not just for Julian, but for Marcus as well. It was time to make a choice, to find a way to reclaim her sense of self without losing everything she held dear. Elena knew that avoiding the truth would only prolong her suffering. One evening, after putting the children to bed, she sat down with Marcus. The atmosphere was tense, and she could feel the weight of her secret pressing down on her. As Marcus looked at her, concern etched on his face, she knew it was now or never. "Marcus, we need to talk," she began, her voice trembling. Marcus's brow furrowed, and he nodded, sensing the seriousness of the moment. Elena took a deep breath, her heart racing. "I've been feeling lost. I don't know how to explain it." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I've met someone, and I've spent time with him. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, and finally to hurt. "Elena, how could you?" he whispered, his voice breaking. Tears streamed down her face as she watched the man she loved crumble before her. "I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. I felt so alone." Marcus looked away, trying to process the betrayal. "You've broken my trust, Elena. I thought we had a good marriage." The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. They agreed to take some time apart to process what had happened. Elena moved into a spare room, feeling like a stranger in her own home. The children were oblivious to the turmoil, and each day she wore a mask of normalcy, forcing smiles and laughter while her heart ached. Elena reached out to Julian, needing to talk. They met in a secluded park where she poured her heart out. "I can't believe I hurt him," she confessed, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But I can't deny what I felt with you." Julian listened, his expression a mix of understanding and regret. "Elena, you need to figure out what you truly want. I care about you, but this isn't fair to either of us." During the weeks apart from Marcus, Elena began to reflect on her life. She took long walks, spent time journaling, and even sought therapy to unpack her feelings. It was a painful but necessary journey of self-discovery. She realized that her actions stemmed from a deeper dissatisfaction, a longing for passion, adventure, and a sense of self that she had lost in the routine of motherhood and marriage. Elena began to explore her interests, rediscovering hobbies she had abandoned and pursuing new passions. One evening, as she watched the sunset from her window, Elena had a moment of clarity. She loved Marcus, the man who had been her partner in life and parent to their children. The memories of their laughter, shared dreams, and the life they had built together flooded her mind. She understood that while she had strayed, It was not too late to find a way back to her marriage. She needed to confront her feelings and work on rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. After several weeks, Elena approached Marcus with a proposal for reconciliation. "I want to work on our marriage," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I made a terrible mistake, but I believe we can rebuild what we had." Marcus looked at her, his expression guarded. "It's going to take time, Elena. Trust doesn't come easily after betrayal." Elena nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I love you, and I want to fight for our family." They began attending couples therapy together, learning to communicate openly about their feelings and needs. It was a challenging process filled with tears, vulnerability, and hard conversations. They explored their individual insecurities and the reasons that led to the distance between them. Slowly but surely, they began to rebuild their connection. Marcus opened up about the pressures he felt in his career and how it affected his ability to be present at home. Elena learned to express her feelings of loneliness without fear of judgment. Months passed, and while the journey was far from easy, Elena and Marcus found themselves growing closer than ever. They rediscovered the joy of shared experiences, date nights, family outings, and quiet evenings together. Elena embraced her newfound sense of identity, encouraging Marcus to join her in exploring hobbies that brought them as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across their living room. Elena knew it was time. She had rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind, but nothing could truly prepare her for the weight of the words she was about to speak. Marcus sat across from her, his brow furrowed with concern, sensing the gravity of the situation. "Marcus," Elena began, her voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk about something important." She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "I've made a terrible mistake, and I owe you the truth." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. "What is it, Elena?" "You're scaring me." With trembling hands, Elena recounted her encounters with Julian, the stolen moments, the forbidden kiss. As she spoke, she watched the myriad of emotions play across Marcus's face: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, a deep, crushing hurt that made her heart constrict. "How could you?" Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. "After everything we've built together?" Elena felt tears streaming down her face, unable to stop them. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I never meant for this to happen. I felt so alone, so disconnected." The silence that followed was deafening, filled with the weight of betrayal and shattered trust. In the days that followed, their home became a battleground of emotions. Marcus moved into the guest room, unable to bear sleeping next to Elena. The children, Olivia and Ethan, sensed the tension, but were too young to understand its source. Elena found herself living in a state of constant guilt, torn between her love for her family and the lingering thoughts of Julian. One evening, as she tucked Olivia into bed, her daughter looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. "Mommy, why is Daddy so sad?" The question pierced Elena's heart like a dagger, forcing her to confront the far-reaching consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, Marcus threw himself into his work, staying late at the office and avoiding conversations that went beyond the necessities of co-parenting. The distance between them grew, a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. Seeking clarity, Elena began seeing a therapist, Dr. Amelia Thornton. In the safe space of Dr. Thornton's office, Elena unraveled the complex web of emotions that had led her to this point. "I love Marcus," Elena confessed during one session, her voice thick with emotion. "But with Julian, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. Is it possible to love two people at once? Dr. Thornton leaned forward, her expression compassionate yet firm. Elena, what you're feeling is not uncommon, but it's crucial to understand that love is not just a feeling. It's a choice, a commitment. You need to decide what you truly want and what you're willing to fight for. These words echoed in Elena's mind long after the session ended, forcing her to confront the reality of her situation. Weeks turned into months, and Elena found herself at a crossroads. She had maintained minimal contact with Julian, who respected her need for space. But his presence lingered in her thoughts, a tempting alternative to the difficult path of reconciliation with Marcus. One rainy afternoon, as she watched Olivia and Ethan playing in the backyard, laughing despite the drizzle, Elena had an epiphany. The life she had built with Marcus, the family they had created together, was precious beyond measure. She realized that what she had with Julian was a fleeting passion, born out of her own insecurities and unfulfilled needs. With newfound resolve, Elena approached Marcus that evening. "I want to fight for us," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "If you're willing, I want to rebuild what we had, make it stronger, better." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and measured. "It won't be easy, Elena. You've broken something fundamental between us." "I know," Elena replied, fighting back tears. "But I believe we're worth fighting for. Our family is worth fighting for." The journey of rebuilding their marriage was arduous, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt. They began attending couples therapy with Dr. Thornton, learning to communicate openly and honestly about their feelings, fears, and needs. In one particularly intense session, Marcus finally allowed himself to be vulnerable. "I feel like I failed you," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I was so caught up in providing for our family that I forgot to nurture our relationship." Elena reached out, taking his hand in hers. "We both played a part in this, Marcus, but I believe we can learn from it, grow stronger together." Slowly but surely, they began to reconnect. Date nights became a regular occurrence, a time for them to rediscover each other away from the pressures of work and parenting. They took up new hobbies together, salsa dancing, cooking classes, creating shared experiences that reignited the spark between them. As months turned into a year, Elena and Marcus found themselves on more solid ground. The trust between them, once shattered, was slowly being rebuilt, stronger and more resilient than before. One evening, as they sat on their porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues, Marcus turned to Elena. "I'm proud of us," he said softly. "We could have given up, but we chose to fight for our love." Elena leaned into him, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. "I'm grateful for this second chance," she whispered. "I promise to cherish it every day." As they sat there, hand in hand, Elena realized that true love wasn't about grand gestures or fleeting passion. It was about choosing each other day after day through the storms and the sunshine. It was about growing together, learning from mistakes, and building a love that could withstand the test of time. The road ahead would not always be smooth, but Elena and Marcus were committed to walking it together, stronger and more united than ever before.